Greetings, Earthlings. Nancy Love, Stargate here. If you don't know why I'm calling myself a Stargate, see the video I just made. I've been wanting to tell that story for a very long time. I grew up with some precious commodity called religious freedom. My one parent was initially an agnostic, then went through an atheistic period, and like a lot of people, toward the end of his life, he got God. He knew finally that he was an immortal soul. Uh, Other parent was raised Catholic, encouraged me to read everything I wanted to about everything I wanted to, and I was allowed to go to any church I wanted to and did. I went to every church that I could walk to as an elementary school child, and then when I got old enough to use the bus on my own, I went to the big churches downtown, and I started, I got quite the education. I knew a lot of ministers, rabbis, priests. And by the time I was 7, I started reading from all the world's religions, all of them. And when I was 8 and 9, I uh, set down a path also of looking at secular philosophies, non-religious philosophical texts like William James and Blaise Pascal and uh, Soren Kierkegaard and William Kant. Kant was probably my favorite dude, along with William James, a major dude with plenty of good words to say. Primarily imperative. Kant himself said that out of the hundreds of thousands of words he'd written in the big, thick texts that he'd prepared for the planet, the heart and brain of mankind, he said that the single most important thing he ever said or thought of saying was the maxim imperative, uh, which, said it in German, and I'm going to loosely translate it. Sorry, but he said, behave in such a way that if everyone followed your example, it would be a beautiful world. Yeah, Kant thought we should all take on the job of being a role model for the entirety of mankind. And when you think about it, if you live your life that way, you remain a remarkably good soul. Fortunately for me and my soul, I got that message when I was very young and endeavored to do that, and have remained enviably lacking in corruption. I've had bad people tell me the single most important blatant thing they envy about me is not my intellect or my education or my decades of business experience or my spiritual wisdom or my pretty blonde hair or anything. It's my lack of corruption and a reason for guilt. It's my goodness that bad people are ultimately jealous of. And I think that's kind of strange and sad, but oh well. Get your own. you know, Instead of being jealous of people who are good, get your own goodness. Jealousy is supposed to teach you what you ultimately should be trying to emulate, not teach you what you're supposed to hate. So I'm in Los Angeles now for almost 20 years, and it's a big town with a lot of big churches and synagogues and all kinds of other types of religious organizations. And I know a lot of rabbis. I find rabbis to be the most fascinating of people because they are always well read, always well educated, frequently extremely articulate, and it was an intellectual capacity to embrace complex phenomena that caused them to be able to get through their seminaries or whatever you call them, and I find them truly fascinating from the standpoint of conversation and philosophizing with. So I do have a lot of good buddies who are rabbis, and also people who run minions who aren't necessarily graduates of any kind of rabbinical school. So I've been talking to some rabbis lately, and I find some of them very reaffirming of faith, and I find some of them to be extremely disappointing. In point of fact, years ago, I talked to a guy who was a rabbi in North Los Angeles, above the hill, otherwise known as Beverly Hills. Maybe it was Van Nuys, maybe it was San Gabriel Valley, maybe it was Northridge, maybe it was up there somewhere. I'm not going to say who or where he was. But he cautioned me to never trust rabbis because they were not necessarily good people. I talked to another rabbi much more recently who said that the rabbis he's known are some of the worst people he's ever known, not the best. And he said, "Oh, you're so naive. You keep thinking of us as good, but in fact, we're bad." I said, "No, please don't, please don't bust my pretty rabbis are good balloon." I even had a really horrifying experience years ago. I sent a 12-page treatise that I'd written about a program that a nonprofit that I wanted to start called the Planet Peace Project. You go figure. And here you are on the Planet Peace Project YouTube channel. There's a circle. But I wanted it to be much bigger than it is. I wanted it to be a formal, established nonprofit. It isn't. It takes money and time and effort and an advisory board and bylaws and all kinds of stuff that I can't produce alone in my current condition. And it was a question of I wanted to send mediators around the world to war-torn areas to resolve conflicts with words and wisdom rather than bombs and bullets across both international boundaries and within countries that had civil wars. I wanted to start advocacy programs where you train people to write letters for, Amnesty International or political prisoners, or I wanted also to train volunteers who would be available for a variety of other nonprofits. Let's say there's a mudslide or an earthquake or a wildfire or a hurricane somewhere, flooding, where well-established nonprofits like the Salvation Army or other international service and rescue organizations are trying to do some good. FEMA even, government programs trying to perform rescues during natural disasters. Well, I would like to think that Planet Peace Project could train volunteers who would be readily available and good to go and have boots on the ground. Let's say trained to rescue animals rather than just people in flood zones, or get the horses out of areas north of Los Angeles when there's a wildfire. And I just wanted to do a whole heck of a lot of good, and it's never really been done because I don't have the money to do it, and I'm not going to be able to do it alone. Nobody ever saved the world alone. It's a group effort, and I'm not finding the right group. So I had sent a 12-page treatise that I'd written about the Planet Peace Project to this guy I knew who, among other things, was a Sunday school teacher at a synagogue in Los Angeles. Yes, some of them do have Sunday school, even though their Sabbath is Friday night and Saturday. And he was all excited about it, and he showed it to this rabbi at that synagogue, and the rabbi said, "I kid you not, I can't make stuff like this up. I would never have thought of this on my own in a thousand years. The rabbi said, wow, her idea could be a real cash cow. Why don't we kill her and take it over? Yeah, buddy. And I said, well, what did you say? And he said to the Sunday school teacher, the Sunday school teacher, who was the father of two and, widely renowned as a sort of kind of decent guy, said that he seriously considered it. And he asked the rabbi, well, how are we going to milk this into some profits and so forth? And I said, whoa, stop. Why did you two guys think that you could take an idea as beautiful as an international peace project dedicated to saving the world and children and animals and to do an idea that was born simply out of the heart of love to do a lot of good on the world? How could you, and why did you think that such an idea could be corrupted for your greed and your profits? And he said, well, that's how Jews are. And I'm going, oh, no, 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 that's how the two of you are. That's not how your cohorts are at all. There's whole levels of mitzvahs. Good Jews have not only this idea that they should fill the world with loving kindness, but lo and behold, they have whole, hierarchies of mitzvahs. And, doing good when everybody knows you're doing good is one level of mitzvah. And there's other levels of good. And they say a good Jew will tell you that the best gift is one you've given anonymously and no one ever knows, and you'll never get social strokes or any kind of credit for having done that good. But to do good in secret just because good needs to be done, that's the highest form of mitzvah. They got hierarchies of good deeds. I've known plenty of wonderful Jewish people. It's just so sad that the evil ones, the corrupt ones, the greedy ones assume that everyone else in their tribe is like that. It's called psychological projection. There's actually a word for it in the realm of psychology. When people assume that everyone else is like they are. Corrupt people are extremely suspicious people because they assume the rest of us are like they are. And for my own part, I've had to realize that one of my worst flaws in my personality is that I project my goodness outward on others, and I assume everybody is as good as I am, and they're not. And that assumption has at times made me easy prey for predators. And I'm learning how to correct my flaw and not assume the best in everyone, because a lot of people don't deserve that assumption at all. They don't earn it. But rabbis and I have spoken within the last year about how they're all still looking for their Messiah, and they want the Messiah to come, and they want this Messiah to arrive and lead and so forth. I looked at the word and found that the word Messiah doesn't just mean leader. It means messenger. It means messenger. And yet, what if the messenger had some pretty bad news, and that is that the heart of mankind is awfully corrupt, and most people spend their lives mired in competition and jealousy and pain and greed and lust. Let's not forget lust, which is sexual greed. And the popular media culture, all these video games and TV shows and movies and the music industry that promotes violence and gangster life and competition and lust. Here we go again. What if we could break free of that and actually see ourselves rightly? What if the Messiah showed up and the message was bad? because humans, to a great, profound extent, are still very unevolved, living at the very, very most base level of instincts and cruelty. So, when I think of the rabbis I know now, the handful that I've spoken to fairly recently, I see people, and I'm sorry to have to say this. I wish I had better news, and I don't mean, I want to make it abundantly clear that I don't mean most rabbis. I don't mean um, all rabbis. I'm absolutely certain and will assert most vociferously in your face right now that I know that there is such a thing as remarkably decent people, men and women, who are rabbis. And those people are, practicing right now a wonderful uh, realm of faith. But the people I've spoken to recently are lust filled. They haven't worked on their sexual greed. They are, I mean, it's ragged. It's dirty and ragged how lusty they are. Um, and that was a message for a specific one of them. They are jealous of one another. They are corrupt, grumpy old men. I don't know any female rabbis personally right now. So you're all not included in this group, but I have at times known some. And they wouldn't know the Messiah if the Messiah showed up and slapped him in the face or kissed him on both cheeks. They would not recognize the Messiah if he or she showed up and began approaching them in person. And the reason is because they would fight for the role themselves. Everybody wants to be the great spiritual leader. Everybody, all these people seem to be competing with one another rather than blessing each other with loving kindness and cooperation and furthering the good work toward a better mankind. And I think that's a shame. It is to be hoped that in the future I have much better news, because some of these same people who put themselves up as spiritual leaders will actually be leading people in a spiritual direction instead of, uh, you know, more and more deeply mired into a conundrum and a vicious spiral of jealousy, competition, corruption, greed, lust, perversion. Uh, they basically are not serving their own temples and synagogues rightly. They aren't serving their congregations rightly. They are hiding their own corruption and basically living lives as frauds. Has this happened, uh, in my view, of Christian ministers and pastors? Yes, it has. And I made previous videos back several years ago. I made a video about uh, two ministers and a new reverend, and I was the new reverend because I got my ordination from the Church of Universal Life. So I am Reverend Love, but I don't generally tout that or try to put myself out as a spiritual leader. Um, these people, both Christian ministers and Jewish rabbis, are not capable of being spiritual leaders because many of them have antisocial personality disorder and are con artists. And when I call them on their stuff and I say, wow, you're like a criminal, right? And everybody looks up to you and tries to follow your lead. Where are you leading them? Sometimes they will actually cry on me. I'm a psychologist, I'm a behavioral medical expert. I am like everybody's big sister, so people often dump on me and vent their worst fears and their pains and tell me their sins like I'm some sort of priest of psychology or something. And I just sit there and take it because I'm interested in hearing what they have to say. And, I want to know who people really are, not just who they appear to be, who they're pretending to be. And often they will say, and this is true of both the Christian folks and the rabbi folks, is that they chose their career path decades ago. They chose it when they were still remarkably good and quite innocent. And over the years, they become more corrupt, more evil, more jealous, more competitive, more capable of sin, not less capable of sin, but more so. And they um, don't know how to get out of it now because their family keeps looking up to them as this, spiritual leader, and their congregations keep looking up to them as these spiritual leaders, and it's their source of money, and that's where their retirement account is housed. And they couldn't pay their mortgage or probably cash in on their retirement account if they change professions now. I've had people who are leading churches who say they would rather be a plumber or a tree surgeon or an accountant than do what they've done with their lives because they consider themselves frauds. So I'm just saying that to say this: be very, very, very careful who you choose as a spiritual leader, because that person might actually be what psychologists call a sociopath who's faking their way through life, and doesn't really have anything to offer you from the standpoint of wise counsel or good advice or being an excellent role model. And as far as these rabbis I've spoken to within the last year, there's a whole cadre of them that are bitter, and they can be vicious, and they can spread vile, completely untrue rumors about people that are completely innocent, possibly because those people are completely innocent. And just keep in mind, always go back to being very, very careful about what you believe about anyone, because criminals always try to discredit their victims. Criminals have it incumbent upon their criminality to make sure that when their victims and the victims that survive their behavior, um, or witnesses to their crimes and their frauds and so forth, when anybody who knows the truth about you, if you're a criminal, starts speaking that truth, a criminal will absolutely defame and discredit the victims and witnesses. Anybody who knows the truth about them is an extremely dangerous person, because they don't want that truth known. After all, that's how they're paying their mortgage, or putting their kids through their fancy schools, or buying that nice car, or those pretty outfits, right? So I try to be really, really cautious about what I believe about people. I've heard a lot of rumors about a lot of people, and I try to be scientific and analytical and fair, and not believe that, because even people who are spiritual leaders will lie. Let's say you're pilfering money from the synagogue or the church's contributions. Anybody who says so needs to be discredited and defamed, because they're messing with your little con job game there. I'm a really angry person. My last name is Love. This causes some cognitive dissonance, but I actually called the judge just today. I left a message for him, and I'm gonna see if maybe, just maybe, I change my name to Justifiably Outraged Love. I'm tired of liars. I'm tired of fakers. I'm tired of pretenders to the throne of spiritual wisdom. I'm tired of people who went to some school years ago and have spent their entire life pretending to be a spiritual leader when they're nothing of the sort. They're not spiritual and they're not leaders. And I'm tired of jealous men who wouldn't know the Messiah if he or she walked up to them, slapped him on one cheek, and kissed him on the other, because they're not ready to be led, and they're not ready for the message of love. Think on these things, my friend. I'm just getting started here.